Hello and welcome to Regional Roundtable. I'm Will Stewart, President of the Greater Derry Londonderry Chamber of Commerce and your host. Regional Roundtable is a program of the Chamber that highlights economic development issues of importance to the Greater Derry Londonderry region. Our topic today is competency-based learning, and our guests here with me today are Doug Cullen, the Career Coordinator at Pinkerton Academy, and Fred Bramante, President of the National Center for Competency-Based Learning. Welcome to Regional Roundtable, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Will.
Well, before we kind of jump into our topic, I'd like for each of you to just take just a moment to tell us who you are and what you do. Who wants to go first?
Fred, go ahead.
So Fred Bramante, I've been around the state for a little while. First New Hampshire family to drive to Boston on Route 93. It's a long story, but anyway.
Bragging point.
Former school teacher, former past chair of the New Hampshire State Board of Education, founder and CEO of Daddy's Junkie Music Stores, and longtime education redesign advocate. So that's what I do. I work on changing what we know school to be.
Well, welcome.
Thanks.
Doug, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, my background is 23 years in high tech, and then when I jumped into education, all that I've done is really on extended learning opportunities for students. So it's really making the bridge between the business community, state agencies, and school communities to see if students can actually use that as part of their learning environment.
And as I understand it, that's what competency-based learning is all about. But
Absolutely.
I'll admit that before I met the two of you, I had no idea what competency-based learning was all about, and I suspect that a number of our viewers are kind of in the same boat.
Sure.
So
Right.
maybe let's start really high level. What is competency-based learning?
Why don't I give us like the origin? So when I was named chairman of the State Board of Education by Governor Benson, he asked me to redesign the public education, a charge most people would have run screaming away from. And going into it, I really didn't know, what that change would look like, but we went into it, and what we came up with was pretty amazing. And the easiest way I can describe it is that if you can visualize the system as we all have grown up in it, the time and place, 180 days, move on by age, inside of school, those were the constants. The variable was learning A's, B's, C's, D's. Okay? Just switch it. And you make it so time and place become the variables. So you can have learning happen anywhere, and the constant is learning. You don't move on until you've demonstrated mastery of whatever the required competencies are. So if you get an A in addition, subtraction, and multiplication, but a D or an F in division, in the current system, you still pass. In a competency-based world, theoretically, you can't move on until you demonstrate mastery of division. When you master all of the required competencies, you move to the next level. And that can happen anywhere. That inside the regulations, we blessed full credit toward graduation, private instruction, internships, apprenticeships, work study. Any way that a student could demonstrate mastery of the required competencies, they can now get credit in a New Hampshire school. It's in the state regulations.
So it sounds interesting, fascinating even in theory. How does this play out in the real world? Can you give us an example of how it works?
Yeah, I mean, when you think of what competency-based education is like, that's what we do in the real world. It's really, really bad for someone to understand 3/4 of what it is to make an airplane engine. I mean, that's not something you want to do kind of part of the way and get an F in the course, because a lot of people will really be impacted by that. That's really what it is in the real world setting, or what we call a natural setting. Mm-hmm. How does the student actually understand all the basic competencies for different occupations and disciplines? That's what we expect. That's what our bosses expect in various industries. So that's what we're trying to emulate, is really what is the natural setting, and can we make students understand that at the earliest of age, and then duplicate that within our educational system. I think, as do others, that the best way to do that is to start showing students what the real world or natural setting environments are like, so that they can start relating that. The traditional style of education still can work for many students. We're not saying eliminate that. But to actually demonstrate this is what the real world natural setting is like, this is why you need to know that, that bolsters up why I need competency-based learning in general. And I think it's a great mechanism for doing that.
Yeah, the goal is to put students more in charge of their learning
Right.
than ever before.
Right.
Give them the opportunities where they become the drivers of their education. Can you imagine a kid in high school saying, I'd like Mrs. Jones for language arts, but I want to use my karate lessons for my physical education. I want to play in a rock band for my music credit. I want to do world history online. I want to learn about manufacturing at the local manufacturing facility. I want to learn automotives from the car dealership, space science from the planetarium. You make the world the classroom. So create all of these opportunities, these relationships with your community folks, with your businesses, your nonprofits, your talented individuals. Make those learning experiences available to kids, and then let them be a primary driver in how their learning looks. And from my standpoint, if we do this job right, why would any kid drop out of high school? If they get to own their learning, and if we do it right, we will put these kids on a path, their path, their chosen path to a career, and that will be great for everybody.
Now you mentioned, maybe a student can get, PE credits, from taking karate or
Yep.
automotive tech credits for working at a local dealership. Now, I know that, as from the chamber perspective, say the mechanic is, very well versed in, mechanics, but may or may not, have any, pedagogy
Right.
classes. They're not teachers. So
Right.
how does that part actually work?
Well, they would ultimately be working with the school. So there would be somebody like a Doug working with them, saying, look at, if we're going to be working with the, with your facility, thank you very much. We're excited about it. Understand, this is not about the kid buying coffee for the mechanics and sweeping the floor. This is about learning. So let's agree on what things this kid is going to learn, what competencies is this kid going to be able to master in this learning experience. And then you have the school acting as that facilitator in the process.
And actually doing a hybrid too. I mean, and that's a big part of what a lot of schools are looking for, where if there's some sort of a missing gap, or if they want to enhance beyond what the curriculum actually provides, then that outside organization can map those little different competencies that they want. So if the school doesn't have, for example, an automotive current tech ed program, they might be able to take a little piece of that, not to replace it, but actually to start showing this is why you would need to know a 3/8 wrench. This is why you would need to know how a carburetor works. It's not just in theory, but this is where we're going to apply it. And this is why, if the truck breaks down, this is what you need to know. And take that whole example and bring it to every career path, bring it to every discipline. And working in hybrid is a great way to suggest these are the competencies that I truly need to know to do either that job or understand that discipline.
Makes it real.
Makes it real.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think exciting. I think for kids, then, anybody who's been a teacher has been asked the question, certainly if they've gotten to middle school or beyond, has been asked the question, what do I need to learn?
Why am I doing this?
Yeah, what do I need to learn this stuff for?
Mm-hmm.
And this answers the question. This is, now they see a real world application to whatever is, those competencies, and they get to do it their way. So, you might want to a kid might want to learn math, maybe in a classroom, maybe online, maybe interning with an architect, a surveyor, accountant, whatever. I mean, there's so many ways that kids can learn math in ways that are relevant to them. So let's create multiple opportunities for kids to decide how they want that learning to happen, all facilitated by the professional educators in the system.
Right. It doesn't necessarily have to be one of those things that he mentioned, but could be actually all of those.
Yeah.
And then the student really has a well-rounded education. That's what you're trying to shoot for.
Right. So the word competency is, I guess, kind of key, this entire discussion and theory. What is, just so we're all on the same page, what exactly do we mean by, what is a competency?
A competency is one competence. See, is a component of becoming competent.
Okay.
So it's like the components of being competent. You want to be competent in, and I gave the earlier one about math. Let's say that you want to be competent in flying an airplane. Well, there's the takeoff part, and there's the keeping the plane in the air part, and there's the landing part, and you can't be good at two or out of the three of them and get your credit. And so if you look at the components that ultimately comprise of what it is to
Right.
be competent. In the end, we send 40% of the kids that we send on to higher education are in remedial courses, because our transcripts, our high school transcripts, they didn't tell the truth about the competence level of these kids. They indicated that they were competent in language arts. They indicated that they were competent in math. And when the colleges got them, they found out that there were deficiencies and had to ultimately put them through some kind of a remedial process. So what we would like to get to, this theoretically should become, instead of a move on by age, you move from first grade to second grade to third grade, it should be a move on by level. Here's the level one learning requirements. You master these, you move to the next level, kind of like karate lessons. You're working on this particular belt. When you demonstrate mastery of these competencies, you are now ready to go to the next level. And that, I think, is what education will ultimately become.
And I think the application of that, if you go back to an example, for example, a simple one, what is the competency to be a cobbler, to actually repair shoes? Well, the last time I had my shoes repaired, I didn't drop them off at a vending machine and suddenly my shoes were repaired. Somebody had to understand materials, somebody had to understand different techniques to be able to bind materials. In addition, they had to understand how to interact with people, how to interact with customers. They had to understand something about finance. So if you integrate the natural setting, it's not just the skill, it's the whole aspect of why that skill is so important inside the society and what other skills complement that. That's what the real world, the natural setting environment provides for that, even going outside the classroom. You can emulate that, but to really demonstrate that in a natural setting, that brings it to a new level.
Certainly, and that makes a lot of sense. Tell me, Doug, how is this playing out locally here in Derry and at Pinkerton?
Yeah, we have, if you look at the broad spectrum of what Fred indicated, almost, not entirely, but almost every student at Pinkerton will fulfill some sort of an extended learning opportunity before they graduate. Some will fulfill several different extended learning opportunities. Most of those directly relate to a career development path or track. So if a student is interested or starting to become aware, for example, of being a chemical engineer, their extended learning opportunities in our particular case are going to be based upon a career pathing for that. So I'm looking to establish relationships in chemical engineering. The extended learning opportunity discipline, though, doesn't require that. So I can just as easily, I'll use that same example, be a chemical engineer, but I could still take an extended learning opportunity that relates to bio, or I could take one that relates to purely mathematics. It doesn't necessarily have to relate to that. In our particular case, to answer your question, most often it does. And there are a variety of different ways that students do that. We have a great series of internship programs, not just one. We do a lot of extended learning through health science. We have one of the largest job shadow programs in the entire state for the secondary school system. The list goes on. So it's a lot, and it's a lot of different ways, in our particular case, wrapped around or inside the curriculum, different class curricula. So it really gives the teachers a sense of control, and they get to interact with this outside communities, not just one.
So it sounds like it's both at Pinkerton and kind of in general, it really is kind of a hybrid system of combining the classroom and kind of the natural setting as you call it.
In many cases, some schools though do a pure extended learning opportunity. Maybe you want to talk to that a little bit.
I think that if you can envision the system that we have as the circles, the big circle is classrooms, little